jobs becoming lesser and lesser and lesser. In 18 months they change, because that's just how complex the environment has gotten. So a fair question would be, if the CMOs are dealing with these fears and these concerns, what are real people feeling?
So it's obvious that for CMOs, it is an increasingly complex, nuanced market space. But hello, hi. We each get a test of our own vocal capacity. But for consumers, as a member of Truth Central, we're really concerned with the ways in which consumers, people on the street, have experiencing such things as globalization. And one of the first things that we noticed is that the idea of globalization is very polarizing. On the one hand, when we ask consumers to enter into our focus groups and draw pictures of a more globalized world, what we see are these beautiful images of harmony and unity, people holding hands and singing Pharrell Williams' Happy, or the Beatles Come Together. Everyone's sort of come together in this unified, beautiful, equal way. And in fact, people are enabled to increasingly access the same opportunities everywhere. And for the Spanish consumer, this optimism is particularly strong, where we see that in Spain, double the global commitment to the belief that businesses will ultimately create a single economy upon which they'll operate. And even the Spanish consumers thinking about the future of their children, who they believe will have a more tolerant and open-minded future. But the picture is not so beautiful always. There are also images of dystopia, catastrophe. Our consumers draw this world that is polluted, where global brands such as Nike and IKEA, Adidas, are polluting the universe. And in fact, there's a flattening of culture where we lose the identity, the things that mean the most to us, and where developed countries are taking advantage of the less developed. And there are things that are keeping consumers awake at night. So for instance, in Asia Pacific, thank you. In Asia Pacific, there's a real fear of the loss of long-standing cultures. In Europe, there's an increasing worry about jobs being outsourced to other countries. Look at in France, this is particularly strong, where 3 out of 4 people believe that the greatest disadvantage of globalization is the loss of jobs. And in Latin America, the real worry about the harm to the environment. Spaniards are not so far behind in this fear. So over half of our global consumers are kept awake at night by these real world problems and these threats. Ultimately, in Spain, far advanced in front of all of our other global markets, they see globalization as a threat to the way that they live their lives. Globalization as an ultimate threat rather than an advantage. At worst, what Spaniards and the rest of our global consumers see is the fact that globalization is a process that happens to you, not something that you participate in. It's really sort of unidirectional, disempowering, disenfranchising.
And actually the truth is, it's not that simple. I mean, it's obviously a normal reaction to have when you say, oh, 1 billion people are on Facebook. 1 billion people are traveling internationally. How many of us over here in this room have heard this so many times at parties, on the news, on the street? The world has become smaller. Everything local is instantly global. Everything is moving fast. Everything is global. And honestly, we are not to blame. If you look at Facebook, you look at Twitter, you look at Google, they have shrunk the world. They have taken lawmakers and governments and borders and completely transcended them. They have started revolutions. So it is absolutely fair to think everything has become global, everything is moving in that direction. At the same time, it is not unusual to also notice the contrast in the conflicting forces, that things are becoming more and more local. As things become more and more global, people become more and more precious. They feel more and more precious to protect what's global. We've seen in 2014 more and more European countries seeking greater independence in policy, in marketing, in lawmaking, in defining their own culture. So this is really a complex time. There isn't one formula to understand what's the best way, what's the best opportunity, and when is the best time. In fact, we think it is so complex that some of the most educated, successful, and rich marketing organizations in the world can often get it wrong. One example that comes to mind is that of IKEA. IKEA is a company we believe is extremely intelligent. They have a lot of resources to understand what is true, what is authentic, and what is necessary and timely in the world. They are a huge, respectful global brand, a real global brand with massive reach across the world. When they were launching their catalog in Saudi Arabia, they didn't quite understand, like, the idea was, like, how should we best portray women? Now, I don't want to say that they didn't understand it, but one can only assume a responsible and well-informed company like IKEA would not want to create controversy knowingly. So, how should we portray women? Perhaps they got the idea, or someone gave them the advice, that let's not create controversy, so they actually just removed the woman from the catalog altogether. That, one would think, is kind of easy. No controversy, but actually that didn't quite turn out that way. There was some kind of outcry in Saudi Arabia, of course, but surprisingly, much more of an outcry in their own home country of Sweden, where people felt that as a Swedish brand, this was something that was not very progressive, and they should have done something that was a little more empowering, perhaps a little more responsible in their opinion. So companies can get it wrong with the best intention. Another company that comes to mind, extremely global, extremely well-informed, extremely wealthy, extremely responsible in their CSR efforts, and completely well-known. In fact, the golden arches after the Coca-Cola logo are some of the most recognized trademarks in the world. And they can also get it wrong. McDonald's, with the best intention in the world, you know, the idea that you're going into a new country, understand what the consumer passions are, understand what's new and happening and relevant there, and find a way to integrate with that. In Mexico, McDonald's wanted to launch the McBurrito. And what they thought would be a good idea is, let's launch it on a Mexican holiday. And on February 2nd is the holiday when everyone in Mexico celebrates the holiday by eating tamales. It is a religious holiday. It's the holiday that remembers the day the Virgin Mary gave up baby Jesus for the church. And so it is a holiday that is celebrated by eating tamales. And what McDonald's said is, you know what? Tamales are a thing of the past. Move with the future. Eat a McBurrito. In fact, they thought they were being so funny that they said even a burrito comes wrapped, because if you know how a tamale is wrapped in leaf. So one would think that that would go well. Actually, that did not. They have 56.6 million followers on Facebook in Mexico, and there was negative outcry, and there were negative tweets that lasted for over 3 months, and the ad was removed in less than 2 days. And it was covered by the CNN and BBC in countries where this had no significance as a religious holiday, just about how this was a big blunder. So the point is, you can get it wrong. It is not an easy thing to figure out. Which is why we feel that in such a connected world, if you're going to navigate this world successfully, you need to be able to navigate a connected world by having an equally connected, well-informed, and orchestrated system at the brand's level. We call this the brand system. Again, it's not something new, it's something you've heard of, seen before, but we are just kind of re-emphasizing the importance of having a brand system where everything connects with a cohesive intent and strategy. And we believe that should all start from a brand mission. Some people call it a brand promise, a brand purpose, a brand essence, but more importantly, it is what it means, the reason you exist in people's lives. Why are you here in this world? What is your mission to make this world better? And that is why we think it is so important to have that at the center and inform everything that you do and deliver everything that you do through that.
And the reason why this is so important is because consumers offer a lot of license, a lot of permission to brands to operate in this world. When we asked our consumers if they believe that global brands have the power to make the world better, A whopping, a huge 85% agreed with this statement. And in fact, in Spain, that optimism and that belief was equally as strong, with 79% of our Spanish consumers agreeing with this statement. And it's not just a belief that is held by the young generation, a naive, innocent generation. It's shared across generations equally. In fact, that belief is so deep that many of our consumers, 81%, believe that global brands have greater ability than governments to make a powerful change, a positive change in the world. And this belief is especially strong in Spain and Europe. They come out most optimistic and committed to this belief that brands have greater ability than governments to create positive change. Russians are a bit more skeptical at 58%. So you see that the sort of investment and the permission that consumers are offering to brands to perform in a better, more positive way. So really what this is suggesting to us is that the era of shallow globalization is dead, when you sort of just vacuum pack a single communication strategy and package that out to the entirety of the world with a singular proposition. In fact, we might learn from brands and companies like Facebook, where Mark Zuckerberg is increasingly offering a human face to a corporation and a brand that is recognized globally. Not only does Mark Zuckerberg stand as the face and the spokesperson for Facebook, but he's also learning Mandarin as he expands into China, which is his last frontier as a market audience. And you might know that in markets like Guatemala and in the United States, he's invented and introduced whole menu items that allow people to express their identity in a more complex and nuanced way.
So that really obviously, now the next thing is you ask yourself this question, right? It's just common sense. If this all is going on, is it perhaps a good time for us to think about a new playbook? Do we need a new set of rules? I don't think so. But do we need a new language? Perhaps we do. A new set of words. And when we talked about globalization, and we talk, because you see, sometimes there's something I like thinking of as a fat word.